what I want to do is introduce you to really neat people that I meet along the way that have influenced me. And somebody who's influenced me over many, many decades is a name, John Michael Talbot. He's a good guy, but um, prolific author. He's written 59 albums, 38 publications and books. I've not even thought about 38 things in my 65 years. John Michael, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're on.
Well, it's great to be here, Bob, and an honor.
I'm just so glad we're here. I got to tell you, I just got back from spending about 10 days in the Holy Land, and I brought with me Viola's granola. For those of you that don't know yet, John Michael lives in a monastery. I want to hear more about that. But they have this bakery. It's called the Little Portion Bakery, and you can like order in some stuff. So Viola really was right there with me in the Golan Heights.
Ooh,
Hey,
yeah.
welcome. Tell us a little bit for people that haven't met you or been introduced to your words and your music, a little bit about yourself.
Oh my. Well, I was born in 1954. I'm going on 70 years now.
Come
And
on.
I don't know when this is going to air. By the time it airs, I might be the big 7-0. I don't know. But, and come from a long line of Methodist preachers and circuit riders on my mother's side. Grew up wanting to be a baseball player and was real serious about that. Along the line, I found out that girls like musicians and music was easier than baseball.
Yeah, and you thought I'm in.
Yeah. So I switched over to music, and when I was 15, I was in a band called Mason Prophet, which hit nationally. And country rock with country rock. Country rock was just, we were on the cusp of that whole movement. And country rock was kind of birthed by a band called the Byrds. And it was through the Goalpost by a band called the Eagles. Our band, Mason Prophet, was expected to be a supergroup. We never became a supergroup because we didn't take the advice of great managers that wanted to manage us, guys like Jerry Weintraub and folks like that. So we made some mistakes, but we did get a chance to tour nationally, as all bands and artists did in those days. Every band played with every other band, and every artist played with every other artist. You got to know everybody.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun, but I found out at a young age that everybody that I thought I wanted to be like, they were good people. All artists are basically just good guys and gals wanting to make art, and they want their art to be appreciated. All the other stuff, the big egos, the big money, all the other stuff comes later. But at the core of it, most artists are just people that want to express themselves and have that be appreciated. That was at the core. And most of them weren't all that happy. So I said, well, golly, there's got to be something else. So I started looking for what was even, as Michelangelo said, God put the figure in the stone. His job was to find it. It was already there. So I wanted to find that divine thing in art that was already there, that the divine had already put there. And I was just uncovering when I was making music. So I began to read. I began to read about, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, the Essenes with Judaism, Sufis with Islam. I began to read about the Greek philosophers because they spoke of the first principle. And I also was reading a Revised Standard Bible that my grandma had given me, and those red letters were jumping out.
Yeah, they
Somehow,
were.
somehow Jesus was able to say so much more by saying so much less. And that really impressed me. You know, the Buddha took pages in his sermons to say something. What he said was really great. But Jesus said so much more by saying so much less. But I didn't have that encounter, personal encounter with what they were all talking about. So I began to pray. I said, God, are you a he, a she, or an it? I don't care. I just want to know. As we say in Arkansas, I didn't have a dog in the hunt.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I, I didn't care. I just wanted to know, and any answer would have been fine with me. And in the band, I prayed, you know, after concerts all across America. And one night, somewhere in the Midwest, I had an encounter with Christ. Now, I never did any drugs. I was around every kind of drug you could imagine. And I only got drunk twice in my life. So uh, people say, well, it was psychological. I go, well, it could have been psychological. You know, God created me with a psychology. He can use it. But I had an encounter with Christ. I didn't understand theology. You know, that was beyond me at that point. But I knew that my sins were forgiven. Uh, and my little rock and roll life, they were starting to stack up. I was doing things that my mom and dad wouldn't have appreciated. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's a good standard.
Yeah. So and I knew I was loved, and I was loved in my family by my mom, my dad, my sister, and my brother. I had a very loving family. So it wasn't like I wasn't loved or anything. I knew what love was. So, but the human love paled in comparison with what I felt in that experience with Christ. So I began calling myself a Christian. And I didn't really know what that was, but I began calling myself a Christian. So that was my first kind of faith conversion point.
Yeah, what a long way too from like kind of a lot of beautiful music that you're producing, even with that band, to living as in a monastery. How
Yeah.
long have you been in the monastery for?
Say what?
How long have you been in your monastery for?
Oh goodness, 45 years.
Take us there from out on the road to saying, I'm going to live a monastic life, because that is not the career track that most people take.
No. Well, you know, when I became a Christian, Terry and I got involved. My older brother, Terry, uh, we put Mason Prophet, began to go a Christian direction. We got involved with the Jesus movement, now called the Jesus Revolution since the big movie, but we didn't call it a revolution. We just called it a movement. And we made Jesus music. And we began to play in Southern California, Northern California. And we also went out and played a festival called the Road Home Festival in Colorado Springs. Met a guy named Billy Ray Hearn, who was the A&R director with Myrrh Records, which was the Christian contemporary wing of Word Records, the biggest gospel music, you know, record company in the world at that point. And we played, and he said, well, I want to sign you. We said, well, this is the band's last gig. We were breaking up. We had wanted to sign with Arista, with Clive Davis. Clive wanted us, but he thought we had gone too rock and roll, away from country rock. And so we were breaking up. I said, well, Billy Ray, that's that. I said, would you sign me? He said, sure. So I signed with Billy Ray in a new record company called Sparrow. It became the biggest record company for Christian contemporary music. And I began on playing on the circuit, which was every fellowship and coffee house and church that was on the Christian contemporary music circuit. But I was grieved because it seemed that they were all good people. They all went to the Bible, and they all were filled with the Holy Spirit. They had everything I thought they needed to get along together, but they all fought each other. So that kind of bothered me. So I went back to the early church fathers to try to figure out how should we live this Christian thing. And I was surprised to find the early expression of what today we would call the Catholic faith. Now, I didn't want to be a Catholic. I wasn't looking to be a Catholic. I didn't even like Catholics. Bob, I'm still working on that one.
In the monastery. I like it.
Yeah. And and at the same time, I was hungry for something deeper than what I saw in the Jesus movement. It seemed a little superficial for me. I wanted something more contemplative and a little more mystical. And I was finding that in like the Imitation of Christ and the life of St. Francis of Assisi and the whole monastic thing with Benedict of Nursia, the Desert Fathers and Mothers, and the whole Eastern Christian monastic thing before the split in 1053 and 1054. And I said, wow, this is what I'm hungry for. But they were Catholic too. So, whoa, I was getting a double barrel shot at this thing. The Lord said, I want you to become a Catholic. The church has been sick. She nearly died, but I want to heal her and raise her up. And I want you to be a part of her. He didn't say I was going to raise her up, by the way. He said, I just want you to be a part of her.
Yeah.
I said, okay, so I sought out a Franciscan priest. He became my spiritual father. And I made one last record. And as somebody in the Jesus movement, I figured, well, that golly, once you become a Catholic, you're out. It was called the Lord's Supper.
I remember that one.
Yep. And we put it out. It was beautiful. And Billy Ray says, well, how am I going to sell a Catholic mass to a bunch of Southern Baptists? I said, I don't know, Billy Ray. Just put it out. You know, it's going to flop, but just put it out. It's my last one. So he puts it out. Well, it becomes the biggest record in Christian music that year.
Yeah.
Big, big hit. So I had built a little hermitage in the woods. My plan was to disappear. And he says, John, it's this huge hit. I said, well, great, you know. And then I did another one, Bob, called Come to the Quiet, which was totally different direction. It was the Psalms, very quiet, lots of space between the notes and just real quiet. I gave it to them. I said, you want to do another one? They said, oh, sure. You know, we just had a big hit. Of course we want to do another one. I played it for them. They said, this is awful. I said, what's wrong? They said, it's too quiet. Americans won't know what to do with it. There's just too much space in it. I said, well, put it out. So they put it out. Well, it sold 3 times more. And that became my pattern. I would go into solitude and silence. I lived in the hermitage. And we put out whatever music God gave me. And they were all these huge, they go through the roof, smash hits. Now, the pattern was they wanted you on the road 150 days a year doing concerts. And you'd do a record a year, and they'd be successes. Well, I did the exact opposite. I would go in, I was in a hermitage, and I would put records out, and they would outsell everything. So for 2 or 3 decades, I was like the biggest seller in Christian music. And I wasn't doing but maybe 5 or 10 concerts a year. That was it. I was living in solitude. And at the same time, people were beginning to show up to the hermitage, knocking on my door. They thought there was a holy man out there. Well, Bob, it wasn't a holy man. It was me.
There you were. Welcome. Well, I think that people are looking for meaning and purpose and love and relationship.
Of
And
course.
I think that idea of changing up the cadence was so attractive to people because we're just get so busy going. People are looking for an alternative. And then you presented one. And what I really have enjoyed about tracking your life is that you led a different life. You said, kind of like Jesus, he wasn't looking for the crowds, he was avoiding the crowds.
Yeah.
And you said, like, what could happen if I jumped off? That's why I was so anxious to have people hear from you directly. So what did you do next from the Hermitage?
Well, I had a vision of community in 1971 when I was very young. I didn't know how to do it. And the Lord said, stay in music, I'll open and shut the doors. And he gave me a couple of dreams of seeing these brown robed monks surround me and teach me how to live in community. Well, that was the Franciscans. So I did all that. And they gave us a place to live at a carriage house. We outgrew it. I ended up coming down here to Arkansas, getting the permission of Bishop Andrew McDonald, God rest his soul. And he allowed us to come into the diocese. We had some land that I had purchased and the other band members had purchased when we had played a Ozark Mountain Folk Festival down here. Big thing that we did. And, well, I used my little bit of land, and the other guys from the band didn't want their land, so I kind of picked that up. So now we have about 450 acres down here, and we started the Brothers and Sisters of Charity at Little Portion Hermitage. And we have an integrated monastery. It has monks, nuns, singles, and families. I'm part of the family expression. We have it's a unique expression for the United States. In the Catholic Church, there are about 10 communities like ours. Most of them are in Europe. And it seems to be the new pattern for community in the Catholic Church. But we're the only indigenous expression of this kind in the United States.
Yeah, what I
And I,
like about what
it,
you're doing is it reminds me so much of Acts 2 and 4. They broke bread together, they had
right,
things in common,
right.
and their numbers were added to daily. Like, I just really love tell us what a day in the life at the monastery would be like for people that haven't experienced that, because they might just think it's all maybe they have in mind that's burning incense and very quiet and stoic, or I don't know, just tell us what a day in the life is. You're out in the gardens working. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, people are up around 5 in the morning. It's not that extraordinary, to tell you the truth. I mean, we're not so heavenly minded that we're no earthly good. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Uh, we have to work and make a living just like everybody else. So here at the monastery, we're up around 5 or 6 in the morning. It depends upon the person. Most people get up around 5. They spend their morning hours in personal prayer and, just getting ready. And then we have a 7 o'clock morning prayer, and that goes until about 7:45. Then there's an 8:30 called a chapter. That goes back to when they read the chapter of the Rule of St. Benedict every morning and also go through the work of the day. We read a little chapter from our rule, and we have basically a work meeting. What are we going to do today? What's on the schedule? Oh, gee, we're going to have terrible weather. We can't work outside. Oh, it's good weather. We can work outside. Then people eat their breakfast and they go to work. And we work from about 9 until 11:30. And again, personal prayer from 11:30 to noon. We have noon prayer followed by a community lunch. And then after that, there's cleanup in the kitchen that's done in common. After that, a little prayer time and then back to work. And we work from about 1 until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then there's a 5:30 evening prayer called Vespers. And that goes until about 6 or 6:15, depending upon who's leading it, how long they preach. We always
Nobody
pray.
wants Billy. Land the
Yeah,
plane, Billy.
well, we always pray that it's shorter.
Yes.
and and then after that, there's you know our supper, uh, which is for the families. It's in their own little domiciles. For the celibates and the singles, it's up at the monastery. After that, it's free time, which people can use for, usually they use it for prayer and study and that kind of thing. And then once a week, we have recreation night on Friday night. Saturday is an unscheduled day. for people to fix up their own places or work outside or work at a hobby or that kind of thing. And then Sunday is the Lord's Day, and we have our Mass. We also have Mass, for instance, we're speaking on a Tuesday, and we have a chaplain that comes over, so we'll have Mass here on Tuesday night. He spends the night. We also have Mass on Wednesday morning. So we usually have Mass on two or three times a week. We will have Mass here.
You know what I
So
love about that, what you've described is a community that is working together. You've adopted some principles that have been super helpful to organize your own faith individually, but then together you're working towards something. And I think people long for that, and I think that's why people come and visit the monastery, because they want to understand a piece of that. I just felt it was really important for people to understand these various expressions of faith.
yeah,
And you've been so impactful for decades in my life through your music and your writing. I just wanted people to have a glimpse at this. Is it true there's in the Benedictine tradition a position called a porter that
yes,
goes down and greets people and says, "How
yes.
can I help you on your way?" Tell us about that. I've always thought like that would be the role. I would either be a greeter at Disneyland or a porter at a monastery.
Yeah, or you could end up at Walmart. Who knows?
Yes, exactly. It's the whole vow of celibacy thing that's kind of kept me afar.
Yeah.
But tell me about what the role of a porter is.
Well, the role of porter is exactly as you described. In a Benedictine monastery, they're in the old days they were at the door. Nowadays, more times than not, they're on the phone. So in our community, there's always somebody answering the phone, and it's basically just to say, you know, Little Portion Hermitage and Monastery, you know, hello, how are
Yeah,
you? And
yeah,
they also say John Michael Talbot Ministries,
yep,
because my ministry is also out of here. So we support ourselves in several ways. We have my Troubadour Publishing, which is my books and my recordings. We have a retreat ministry, so people are coming here on retreat all the time, and that's very, very important. And we invite our listeners, our viewers. Are we being viewed as well?
yeah, all the above.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to put you on video with that beard, man. It rocks.
Hey, well, you only see about half of it here.
Half of it.
I'd have to stand up to do the whole thing, buddy. Okay, but yeah, we invite people to come and make a retreat here. People come and just spend a day visit, or they spend. We encourage people to spend more than one night if they're going to spend the night, to really get into the rhythm of the life with our prayer, and with, if they want to join us in work, they can do that. Or if they just want to spend time in prayer, they can spend time in prayer. So we invite people to come and make a retreat. I give 3 retreats a year that are weekend retreats. So I give directed retreats here at the monastery. And we also make our living from our bakery, Little
Yeah.
Port Bakery, which you mentioned. And we have some of the best baked goods. Viola's granola. I'm not kidding. It is the best granola in the
Oh,
world.
changed my
Look at my
life.
beard, folks. Look at this thing. I mean, look at this thing. They think I'm a hippie. I get granola all the time. It's all good. But Viola's granola is the best granola in the world. And we also have St. Clair breakfast cookies, named after St. Clair of Assisi, and for your real gusto, St. Anthony Hermit bars.
Come
And
on.
the
Hey,
Benedict,
here's the point for people that are listening. I bet number one, you have been exposed to someone has lived a monastic life, and then if you did, you probably had an idea that they would be very kind of quiet and stoic and maybe non-communicative, that they're
no.
spending all this time. And then John Michael Talbot has been showing up for the last 40 or 50 years in my life, um, as a guy who loves God, he loves people, he loves music, and what he stands out in my mind is a person who loves community. And because God does his best work in community, I would encourage you, if you're listening, to find yours. Certainly experience, a weekend, go to a retreat with John Michael. But
Yeah.
the thing I want you to do is curate and find community. And if you haven't found that community, make that community.
Yeah.
That you get to actually invite people to it, kind of like what you did, because a lot of us are just struggling with loneliness. We're all separate, and we drive separately, and we live separately. And even when we're together alone,
Yeah.
so to say, how can I take a deep dive into community? And when we find faith and couple that with community, you really find a ton of purpose. That seems like that's been the outgrowth. You could have taken so many different roads with your life and your career and your writing and your music, but you decided this one that leans heavily towards community. Any last kind of words and just launching people towards this life filled with other people and finding meaning and intention through some of the principles you're using?
Yeah. The What goes through my mind, Bob, is God created us to be a tribal people. And our modern society has become so urbanized that it's no longer tribal. We live in these mass urban sprawls. And ironically, we are cut off from each other in these vast urban sprawls, where if we were following how we were created to be and how humanity has lived for most of our existence, which is kind of the existence of a small town where everybody knows each other, you know, and family stays together and knows each other. That's what we're created for. So we have to find creative ways to rediscover that in our modern era. In our modern era, monasticism basically kept civilization going in the West during the Dark Ages. And monasticism provides a wonderful way and a wonderful model to keep that going. In our community, we have a domestic community that is for people in their own homes all across America. We have 6 different regions, and it's for Catholics and non Catholics who really want to live our life, but they want this communal experience together. And they want to live a life that is in communion with God, in communion with each other, and in communion with nature, a simple life, a life of
Yeah.
simple living. And so they all do it differently. We lay down the general principles, but we don't do it in a dogmatic way. And they really find ways to come together. Uh, they might do it virtually, and like we are doing right now. They might do it in cell groups or small groups, and some of them do it in clusters, where we have one group in Chicago where they have lived in the same neighborhood together. They made that commitment as college kids, and now they're grandparents, and they've
Yeah.
still lived in the same cluster together, and it has enriched their life
Yeah.
beyond words, beyond words.
Yeah. I
Through the
just want
touch
to
and through
advocate for that. Go ahead, John.
and so our domestic community is a wonderful way for people, if people out there are interested, check that out as well. Or if you don't want to join us in doing it, you could try it yourself. But trying to found community is tough. It's very difficult. So if you can find an existing community like ours, the Brothers and Sisters of Charity, or maybe with the Benedictines, you know, with the Benedictine Oblates, or with secular Franciscans, or secular Carmelites, or secular Dominicans. There are old, tried and true existing communities out there. So I
Yeah.
would recommend that.
Yeah, and then another version of that, it's not like a lesser one, could be laden with intention, is to just get together in a small group with people to just say, let's make it uh, different than all the other gatherings and let's keep it super real. And then
Yeah,
let's not just agree with faith because Jesus never asked anybody to agree with him. But let's actually do something with our faith. And it doesn't need to be big and grand in other
no,
people's eyes. It can be big and grand in God's eyes. And that's us enjoying his creation and
yeah,
among his creation, each other.
yeah.
John Michael Talbot, thank you. Thanks for spending time with us. I love this life that you led where you just jump the tracks. And there may be somebody listening. I don't know if you're stuck in traffic or out on a jog, but maybe there's something that John Michael said that like resonates with you. Pick up his book, Late Have I Loved You. It's a new release. There's an album by the same name. Find some other things, but find each other, find community, develop it. And again, if faith guides your steps, put Jesus in the middle and see what happens. You guys, you've been listening to the Dream Big podcast. Hope this was helpful for you. It's just an insight from another really neat guy. I hope you'll walk away with this feeling like, wow, I just spent part of my day with a monk. That isn't what everybody gets to say every day. But then go do something with what it is. Don't just agree, because I don't think John Michael's intent is for us to agree with him. It's to actually activate something in your life and then see where God takes you next in the adventure. All right, you guys, we'll talk to you next week.